Guys, we've got another image sent in and we're trying to achieve another brown and teal color grade, and this one only has a little bit of contrast to it as well, but we'll get over to his Instagram and I'll show you what I mean. So as you guys can see, you can go give him a follow down in the description. I'll put all of his links down there for you guys. So if we just come down, I'll really show you the brown and teal tones. So this one shows it really well, those really desaturated brown tones, and then those teals that are blues that are almost green down there in the water. And then other images will show that there's a very small amount of contrast. So I mean, those blacks aren't that dark and those whites aren't that bright, but otherwise the image is very desaturated. And yeah, we're going to be working with this shot right here, and I've actually got the settings for this. So it was a shot on a Nikon D 7200, shot on a Tamron 10 to 24 millimeters f 3.5 to 4.5, and then the settings for that photo is 10 millimeters, so really wide, and then an f-stop of f8, so that's really going to get the entire image in focus, which is what we want for a landscape shot. And then a shutter speed of 1/320, so that's it's fast enough to keep a sharp image, and then you're just going to balance that with exposing the image correctly, and then a low ISO of 250 there. So we're going to be trying to recreate this shot right here, and yeah, you guys go check his work out in the description. If you come up here and if you click here, you guys can come check out his YouTube as well, so I'll be linking that down in the description. You guys can go check it out. And almost forgot, you guys can go check out their blog as well. So if you come over here, we can visit his partner that he's traveling with as well, and she has a very similar style, a bit more subtle on those brown and teal tones, but still those brown and teal tones and a little bit of contrast there. So if we come back up, we can click right here to visit their blog, our travel blog, and as you can see, they got all the equipment, a few guides, and lots of helpful content over here. So I'll be linking this down in the description as well for you guys. Here's the raw image that he sent me, and then the edited screenshot from his Instagram. So the first thing we would do, well, what I'd normally do is look to see if I have a preset that looks like this, and I actually do. It's this one. So we've got brown and teal and brown and teal 2, and you can see that already looks very similar, especially if you just drop the saturation of those blues. So if I just drop that a bit, or the aquas, drop that a bit, maybe just up saturation total a bit, drop a bit of contrast, we get something very similar pretty quickly. But I want to show you guys from scratch, because that's what I would normally do, apply a preset and make changes, but I'll just show you guys from scratch how I'd do it now. So if I just go back, let's go back to there, and yeah, those presets are available for you guys if you are after them, but I want to teach you guys everything, so I'm going to show you straight from scratch. Okay, so first thing I'm looking at is the highlights. We're really bright, so over here you can see just brightness. You can't really see the outline and the detail like you can in his. So up in the sky, for example, you can see the outline of the clouds in the middle there. Over here it just looks white. I want to bring out that detail a bit more. I want to drop the highlights. And in general, the style is very flat. It doesn't have much contrast, so that also works with it, not having that brightness to the highlights. Okay, so I'm gonna actually do the curves first. So I'm gonna really drop the contrast, and usually the curves will just be done from a preset, but since I'm doing this from scratch and showing you guys, I'm just gonna really drop the contrast, do the curves, because otherwise the contrast will be way too strong after the curves and it just wouldn't make sense. So I'll do the curves first, and then just explain to you guys why I moved them. Okay, so that's the curves done. I'll try to explain what I've done, but just before that, I'll just bring up the shadows, because as you can see, we're way brighter down here. So I'm just gonna bring up the shadows. Lots. Okay, so this image is actually pretty flat and doesn't have much contrast. So we maybe didn't need to do the curves in the red, green, and blue channels, but since that previous preset worked so well in getting this style, I thought I'd just keep it the same. But because we did a little bit of an S-curve here, and we didn't really need that contrast, so that previous preset put a lot of, we lifted the highlights, and we probably didn't need to do that. And that means, since I did that in the red, green, and blue channel, it'd be like doing this in this curve. So when I come back to this one's gonna allow us to get that flat look that he has in his style. I've had to bring that down extra because I brought it up in these curves, and I probably didn't need to do that, but that was from the preset. So I thought I'd just keep it the same because it worked pretty darn similar. So just trying to teach you guys the process of working with presets as well. So probably didn't need that lift in the highlights, so still trying to achieve that fade that this curve gives, so dropping the highlights extra here. And then he has a very bright white, so areas, unless he's brushed over them, areas like this here, the brightest bits, they're quite bright, they pop quite a bit out of the flatness of the image. So I've left the white point up there. See how those very white bits stay nice and bright? So I didn't drop them. And then his blacks are pretty dark. The darkest areas, they're quite dark, so bringing the shadows down and a little to the left, you start to affect the blacks a bit more than the shadows, and then those blacks are still quite low there. Okay, so hopefully you guys understand that. And let's just fiddle around up here again. Let's add this contrast back in. So I just took heaps of that contrast out so it would make sense as I'm doing the curves, but now we don't have enough contrast. Let's put it back in. Okay, so let's come down here. Let's knock back a lot of the saturation really quickly to make it easier. Okay, we start to get somewhere. Right. So if we come back up, let's drop the clarity. So here's a really smooth looking image. Let's drop that down. It's very natural looking, nice and smooth. Dropping the clarity gets rid of that digital look. Put a bit of saturation there. Gonna drop the blacks, so I think we're a bit darker. Say, like I said before, some of the blacks are quite dark, and since we brought up the shadows a lot, we can probably afford to bring down the blacks, and then we will still get a nice bright image because we brought the shadows up so much. Okay, so that just very slightly darkens the darkest areas, and I think we're okay because we've got our shadows so high. And then for that pop to this image, to the brightest areas, I'm just going to bring the whites up a bit. I think we're good. I might just bring up overall exposure. Yeah, I think that looks much better. And yeah, let's move on to color now that we've got our exposure and fade pretty good. So let's start with split toning, because split toning will affect the entire image, and you want to do that before HSL because anything you do in here is going to shift all these colors. Okay, so a key to achieving this brown and tealish look is to add warmth into the shadows. So the closest color you've got to a brown is like an orange or a red. So that's what I'm going to put in, just a nice warm brownish tone, which is like an orange kind of. Going to do that. And then it's also got this purplish tinge to it, like purple is kind of close to brown, and it's in the highlights. So if you just look like at those rocks in the water there, I think we look quite green, and we want to look a little more on the purple. So I could add a teal. Some people would add a teal. So if I lift this up, but as you can see, we just look a little green. We didn't add green in there, we added a teal, but I want to get more of a purple to the highlights. So if you look at these whites, they look blue, if not green. So how do you get more of a purple? You just add a darker blue, and that will be closer to the purples you want. You can see you start to get that purple tinge. We've got a bit too much at the moment, so let's bring it back. And then in those whites, you sort of get the color you're after, which is a tiny bit of purple. Purple sort of gives off the brown look a little better. And then you always want to be trying to do the opposites in your split toning. So if you added a red or an orange down here, it'd be a teal. So we added quite a dark orange, so we did quite a dark blue up here. And now for balance, I want to add more of the highlights throughout the entire image. So I want to shift it to the right here, and it's going to put more of our highlights throughout the entire image rather than the shadows. So at the moment it's 50-50. If I put this to 0, 50-50, shadows, highlights, more of the highlights throughout the image. On those tones affecting everywhere. Well, say I think that you could think of it as now the highlights are affecting 61% of the image, and it's keeping those oranges like down in the shadows. Right, let's keep going. Let's come up to HSL now. So we're sort of missing a lot of those warm tones, so the yellows are going to play a really big part in this. So if we shift the yellows over to an orange, and then you really want to desaturate them. So if we take it down, you start to get those brown tones, and that's how we really got that brown tone over here, to all those greens and yellows over there. You also want to bring down a lot of greens. Let's maybe bring back some blues maybe. Let's work with some oranges. Go down a bit. Actually bring some of these yellows back. Aqua's down. So aquas are affecting that brightest part of the water. Just trying to match it up. Saturation of the red, so pretty much just a skin tone there. Purple. Not a lot of purples. Just bring it down close to everything else. Same with magenta. Just if there's not much in the image, just bring it down similar to everything else. Okay, and we are doing pretty well. So we just want to do the hue, but yellow was the main one that's going to give us those brown tones. And then when you desaturate most of your other colors, really like the greens, If you desaturate them, it really isolates those orange yellows, helping you get that brown look. So we're pretty good already. Let's just shift some of these. So we need a bit more of a redness to our reds. He just looks a bit orange. And same with our oranges. Let's actually start with the oranges and move that across. And then there's almost a purple to his reds. Just go this way. Try and get that skin tone. And then the greens that are there, let's go to, because even if you desaturate them completely, they're still gonna be there a bit. So they're minus 100, but they're still there. And you can see, like, saturation is minus 100, but they're still there, very much there. So that's because a lot of them are in the yellows as well. Let's go about there. So it's just a tiny, they hold a little bit of green that it still looks a little bit natural. So you don't want to go completely, it starts to look really, really brown. We want to keep it about there. Now blues, so our blues are like in the sky. So that's going to really, if we just play around, it's pretty much everything. But so you might ask yourself, you might try to match the colors up here with the blues. So you're like, but I'm gonna look at the sky, and the reason I'm gonna try to match up the blues by looking at the sky is because the aquas only affect this spot. So I'm better off looking at the sky, trying to match it up. So I need to go to way more of a teal. So over here, teal, over here, deep blue, if not purple. I need to go this direction. I think that looks much closer. And then the aquas, we look still an alright color there. So the aquas can just stay there. So luminance, the brightness of some of these colors, might just lift the reds a little, so it's just that tiny bit of skin tone there. And then, so maybe the brightness of the water right here, since it's such a main part to this image, creates a pretty nice pop. And the blues, so the blues affect most of the image, but up the sky you can see we're quite a bit darker over in his. Let's drop it a bit. We'll just do it a little bit because we don't want to go too dark, unless you maybe bring aquas up again. I think we're good like that. And yeah, sharpening can stay at 40. And then a little bit of grain. We don't need much. It's hardly noticeable. But even if I can't really see grain, I always just put a tiny bit in. Okay, and I think we're about done there. And if I just look at some filters, so if I just grab this one, and so I've already placed these for the purpose of this tutorial. This one is affecting the entire sky. So if you look at his image, his sky is quite a bit darker. So I might think I need to drop my highlights, but I already have dropped the exposure, but we've actually exposed everything else in the image really well, except the sky, so that's a bit odd. So I think he's coming with a filter. You know, all I'm going to do is drop the highlights and maybe drop the whites. I don't really want to be dropping exposure because that's going to drop the shadows and blacks as well, and it's going to create a really dark contrast almost. You want to drop the highlights and the whites, and that sort of keeps that flatness to the style. Sort of just a nicer way to drop the brightness of the sky. And then the reason for doing that is probably just to keep the focus of the image down here. So we've got our subjects and we've got all this water and stuff down here. It's to keep our eye coming downward into the middle of this image, which is most important. Okay, so that sort of just darkens up our sky a little, and then let's look at some other filters. So I think we just got a brush. So we just select this brush. I'll tick this to show you where it's affecting. So this little spot right here is quite a focal point of the image, and I think what we could do just to make it stand out a bit more is up the clarity. And exposure. And that just makes that part of the image stand out a bit more. And yeah, I think we are about good. Pretty similar there, so overall quite the flat look, and I might just keep it there. Here's our before and after. I'll just show you guys the cropping. So go like this. So really cropped in there, and we had to straighten the horizon a little. So straighten the horizon is, you can use the ruler like this, but in the original the horizon was a little off, and you always want to straighten that. So make sure your horizon's nice and straight. It subtly makes a big difference, so make sure you doing that. And yeah, I'll leave it there, guys. I'll put all of his links down in the description so you guys can go give him a follow and go check out his work and stuff like that. Let him know that you found him through these tutorials. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Comment down below who you guys want to see. So just keep commenting people that have really great images, really unique editing styles, cool editing styles, and comment them below so I can go reach out to them on Instagram, ask them to send in a photo, and then do a tutorial on them. So helps me if you do that. Check out presets if you're liking these tutorials. Check out the Luts. I don't post video content on YouTube, but I do over on my website, so you have to go over there to check it out and see if you like it. And yeah, that's all for now, guys. Comment down below, leave a like, tell me what you thought, and yeah, I'll be coming out with a lot more soon. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.